What if humans stopped talking? Everyone would be super confused. The first few days would probably be very difficult. We have no idea what to do with ourselves. No one would know how to interact with each other. But eventually, we would find a way to adapt. It's hard to imagine our world without talking. Most of us talk all day long. We talk to friends, family, coworkers. We talk about our feelings, our thoughts, our plans for the future. We use language to communicate, but also to express ourselves, to build relationships, and to understand the world around us. What if one day humans just stopped talking? What would happen? How would we survive? In this video, we're going to take a look at what would happen if humans stopped talking. So let's get started. In the beginning, there would be chaos. Humans are social creatures. We rely on language to communicate and interact with each other. Without it, we would be lost. We might try to communicate using sign language or writing, but those methods are not as efficient as talking. It would take a lot longer to get our point across, and it would be much more difficult to understand each other. One of the biggest problems would be that we couldn't warn each other about danger. Imagine if someone was trying to break into your house in the middle of the night and you couldn't scream for help. You might think that this would never happen, but think again. There are over 1 million home break-ins every year in the United States alone. And many of them happen when people are sleeping. If you couldn't talk, you might not be able to defend yourself or protect your loved ones. We could use other methods of communication to warn each other about danger, such as flashing lights or sirens. But these methods are not perfect. They might not be loud enough, or they might not be clear enough. They could also be easily misinterpreted. For example, a flashing light might be mistaken for a fireworks display. That's why it's so important to have a reliable way to communicate, especially in emergency situations. We use language to share information, but we also use it to build relationships. From the time we are born, we begin communicating with our parents, our siblings, our friends. Language is how we express our love, our affection, our care for others. It's also how we make new friends and build relationships. If we stop talking, people would likely become isolated and lonely. We need to communicate with other people in order to form bonds and create relationships. It's human nature. Without language, we wouldn't be able to share our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences with other people. And that would lead to a lot of loneliness and isolation. Of course, there are other ways to communicate besides talking, such as texting or emailing. But these methods are not the same as face-to-face communication. They don't allow us to build the same kind of relationships. Some of us might think that it would be nice to stop talking. After all, it can be exhausting to chat with people all the time. Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to retreat into our own little worlds and enjoy some peace and quiet? Well, maybe at first, but eventually we would start to feel cut off from the rest of the world. We need to communicate with other people in order to survive. Even if you are an introvert who doesn't talk much, you still need to be able to communicate in order to get your basic needs met. You need to be able to ask for help when you need it and to tell people what you want and what you do and want. Without language, it would be very difficult to do any of that. We use language to express our emotions, but we also use it to control our emotions. When we talk about our feelings, we are able to process them better. This is why talking to a therapist can be so helpful. It gives us a chance to get our thoughts and feelings out in the open, where we can start to make sense of them. If we stop talking, people would likely become more emotional. They wouldn't be able to process their feelings as well, and they would be more likely to lash out at others. Without language, it would be much more difficult to control our emotions. Humans are highly adaptable creatures. If we stopped talking, we would eventually find a way to communicate with each other. We would develop new ways to express ourselves and to build relationships. We might start using sign language or writing. We might develop a new language altogether. The problem is that this would take time. In the meantime, there would be a lot of confusion and chaos. We might not be able to warn each other about danger. We might not be able to get our basic needs met. We might not be able to keep our emotions under control. But eventually we would adapt. We always do. Humans are survivors. We have overcome many obstacles in our lifetime, and we will continue to do so in the future. If we stopped talking, it would be a major obstacle, but we would eventually overcome it. How long would it take? It's impossible to say for sure, but it would definitely be a long time. It would take years, if not decades, for humans to adapt to a world without talking. Now, let's take a look at some of the positives of a world without talking. First of all, there would be a lot less noise pollution. Can you imagine how peaceful it would be to walk outside and not hear the sound of traffic or construction or people talking loudly on their cell phones? It would be like living in a dream world. There would also be a lot less gossip. One of the things that humans love to do is talk about each other, to spread rumors and gossip. This often leads to misunderstandings and conflict. Without language, people would be less likely to gossip about each other. There would also be a lot less arguing. One of the things that causes the most conflict between humans is talking. We argue with our partners, our friends, our coworkers. We argue about politics, religion, sports. We argue over almost everything. Without language, people would be less likely to argue. Of course, there would be a lot of negative consequences of a world without talking, but there would be some positives. It would be a different world for sure, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people might actually thrive in a world without talking. For example, those who are good at writing might be able to communicate more effectively in a world where talking is not possible. Those who are good at reading body language might be able to understand others better in a world where talking is not possible. And those who are good at empathizing might be able to connect with others on a deeper level in a world where talking is not possible. So what if humans stopped talking tomorrow? It would be a disaster. There would be so many negative consequences. But what if humans stopped talking 1,000 years from now? Maybe it would be a good thing. Maybe it would force us to evolve and become better communicators in other ways. Maybe we would learn to listen to each other better. Maybe we would learn to be more empathetic towards each other. Maybe we would learn to appreciate the things that really matter in life. What do you think? Would you like to live in a world where humans stop talking? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps me out. Thanks for watching. Bye.